move forward, take steps to improve the U.S.-India relationship, not criticize and berate India and focus narrowly on market access. The U.S. has broader interests in its relationship with India, and the Trump administration needs to recognize that and make its policies accordingly.
Sincerely hope those in the White House and, at Pentagon and, of course, the State Department are listening to you. Lisa Curtis, for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. Let me now throw it open for wider discussion. Joining me on India First is Professor Brahma Chelani, one of India's best-known voices on national security and strategy, and Air Marshal Anil Khosla, former Vice Chief of Air Staff. Professor Chelani, Lisa Curtis seems to believe that something changed in the last three weeks or so, or post-Operation Sindoor. Is that also your impression, that President Trump got really miffed? He thought he should get credit for the India-Pakistan ceasefire. He didn't. But for something like that, is he willing to throw the entire India-US relationship, or at least the trade relationship, out of the window?
He's playing hardball tactics, largely to strong-arm India into accepting a one-sided trade deal. That is Trump's game plan. He is stepping up pressure on India. He is now using the Russian oil element as a pressure tactic. The fact that the world's biggest buyer of Russian oil, China, has not been penalized in any way. The executive order that he issued only targeted India. Yes. Speaks volumes about how he's using Russian oil to mount pressure on India. And look at the bigger irony. While claiming to punish India over Russian oil, Trump has hit India's non-energy exports to the US with steep tariffs, but he has exempted Indian exports of refined fuels like jet fuel, diesel, and gasoline made from Russian crude.
Yes.
So Russian oil is toxic politically for Trump as long as that fuel, that oil is used in India or somewhere else. But if it's pumped into American aeroplanes, trucks, or cars, then it becomes acceptable and exempt from tariff.
Yes.
The Indian refined fuels are exempt both from his first 20% tariff imposition and from his latest punitive 25% tariff hike. So it clearly shows that what he is doing is not related to anything else. It is that the way he strong-armed the EU to accept a trade deal largely on American terms, he's also doing the same with India. He is mounting pressure on India to accept a trade deal largely dictated by the US. Unfortunately, what we are doing, we are only talking about the pressure on the agricultural and dairy markets. Yes. That is only one sticking point. The fact is that in the negotiations, the US side insisted that even under a final trade agreement, the US will retain a high tariff on Indian goods, mirroring the 19% to 20% tariff rate the US has persuaded Vietnam, Indonesia, and Philippines to accept. So they were insisting that even under a trade deal, the tariff rate on India would be about 20%. So that became the leading sticking point in the negotiations. And then they wanted India to commit to charging zero tariffs on most imports from the US.
So that's clearly bullying tactics, and that's not how strategic partners behave. Air Marshal Khosla, this is a relationship that the two countries have invested a lot in, since the post-Pokhran Thaw, since after the Kargil war. Is Donald Trump just for a trade deal, throwing that strategic partnership out of the window. Will this have an impact on the strategic partnership, and especially on the mindset? Can India trust the United States of America, or are you to deal with them as two separate things?
Yeah, Gaurav, you have brought in a very, very important point. This blunt tactics which he's using, blunt weapon of tariff, and citing the trade imbalance as well as Russian oil. The military to military cooperation will definitely get affected, and trust deficit as it is there. Historically, we had problems. So that trust deficit will increase. Let me tell you, military to military cooperation in the last few decades, if not years, in 2016, it was declared major defense partners. We have acquired American equipment, Apaches, C-17, C-130. Chinooks, so all these aeroplanes and even drones. We have been increasing our interoperability with military exercises of all types, and also agreements like LEMOA,
Yes.
COMCASA, and other agreements. Okay. So military cooperation has been really doing well, and in the last few decades. But this one is slightly more than the tariffs, Gaurav. One is the tariff issue. The second issue which militarily upsets or reduces the trust is warming up to Pakistan.
Yes.
Having lunch with their chief and then making statements which are not conducive to Indian mindset. So, that warming up to Pakistan is also added to the whole thing, and the trust deficit comes in. Having said that,
Professor Chilani, okay, Professor Chilani, how would you view this? If you're a comprehensive strategic partner, when we're talking about interoperability, when we are buying military hardware from the United States of America, intelligence sharing is increasing. This satellite launch on the 30th of July, the NISAR satellite was seen as this great cooperation between ISRO and NASA. And suddenly these sanctions and trade deals, and him apparently the Pakistani military dictator or field marshal or failed marshal will be traveling to the United States once again. Does that take away from the strategic partnership?
The paradox is that on one hand, the US is seeking to tout the comprehensive global and strategic partnership with India. On the other hand, in India's own immediate neighborhood, US and Indian interests have become increasingly divergent. Whether it's Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Myanmar, the US and India are certainly not on the same page. In Pakistan and Bangladesh, the US is supporting military-backed regimes. In Myanmar, is seeking to topple a military regime, despite the fact that by arming Myanmar rebels, the US aid is destabilizing Manipur and perhaps even the wider northeastern India. But the more fundamental thing is this, that even before Trump took office, the US-India relationship was fraying under Joe Biden.
Yes.
It was Joe Biden who modernized and upgraded Pakistan's F-16 fleet to make it more lethal against India. It was Biden who introduced the bailout packages for Pakistan by supporting these bailouts in the IMF. So when Biden was in office, there were two separate IMF bailout packages for Pakistan. And we saw around the same time as the fraying began, and there were two indictments that were aimed at the Modi government, that India began seeking a thaw in relations with Beijing as a hedge. So just the way Washington has driven Russia and China closer together in an unholy alliance, it is impelling India to seek better relations with China, even though China still has not rolled back its encroachments from eastern Ladakh. So it's, the American policy is becoming detrimental to India's vital interests in its own neighborhood.
Absolutely. And what does this then mean for the Quad And NSA Ajit Doval is in Moscow. Russian President Putin will be coming to India. Prime Minister will be traveling to China. So, Air Marshal Khosla, do you see some kind of a revival of what the Russians are very keen on, the Russia, India, China trilateral? Any forward movement there as a hedge or a counterbalance to America getting closer to Pakistan?
Yeah, so that time will tell. But carrying forward to what is being said earlier, also, this is a very dangerous situation. Earlier, also, differences have come out. Threats have been given about sanctions and other things, but they've been able to compartmentalize it and move forward and segregate the two. And strategic alliance or strategic partnership is held. But this time it is slightly more than that. And fear is that if it spirals downwards, it may push India towards Russia and China. And the whole global scenario will be different then. So time will tell whether the maturity comes in and the issue is able to be capped, or it will spiral downwards.
Professor Chilani and Air Marshal Khosla for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks.